Years, and it's time I sat down.
I think so. Yeah. I'm going to call Chris Farfoy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr Chair, for the chance to speak to the title and commencement of the Student Loan Scheme Amendment Bill. And as my colleagues, both David Clark and David Cunliffe, have chosen to do during their contributions to this title and commencement debate, I've chosen a number of alternative titles for this bill. And I wanted to offer up one, the Student Loan Can We Trust This Government with Our Information Loan Scheme Amendment Bill. And if I can, Mr Chair, I'd like to just paint a picture as to why I think that should be the alternative name for the title for this bill, and turn to Part 1, I believe it is, in Clause 34, where it looks to amend Section 208 of the parent legislation, and that says, for the purpose of this section, is to facilitate the exchange of information between the Inland Revenue Department, and we'll come back to them soon, and the New Zealand Customs Service for the purpose of establishing an information matching program to assist the Commissioner to do a number of things, and those things are offered on page 28, and they are to verify whether borrowers are New Zealand based or overseas based, to verify whether borrowers are New Zealand residents, and to locate, when they enter or leave New Zealand, borrowers who are in serious default within the meaning of the Customs and Excise Act 1996 in relation to student loans. And I would suggest to this House and to the people at home that a lot of that information would be very sensitive information that you wouldn't want to necessarily see go flying into the hands of people who either didn't have the need to have it, or you certainly wouldn't want to have it if they had other agendas to use that information. And I do think that we should consider looking at the title, an alternative title to this bill for those reasons, because of the track record of this government around the security of very sensitive information. And this week we have seen a rather large case around the security of information, which is sensitive information which we're looking around here. So we want to make sure that within the bounds of the Student Loan Scheme Amendment Bill and Section 34, that information is held very tightly, because we have seen 83,000 pieces of information around for a large number of quake claimants in Christchurch get into the wrong hands. Again, we'd want to see some safeguards in this bill to make sure that didn't happen again. And also, with respect to the Inland Revenue Department, which I say it again, are quoted as one of the parties here for the information exchange in Section 34. They have had an instance where I believe, and I'm looking at David Clark here for some guidance, where it was around 6,300 individuals were caught up in another private, improper release of private information. Now that is pertinent to Section 34, because we're talking about an agency within this bill who has been given the right to exchange information with another government agency, to exchange information, and we need to be sure around the security of the information that we're talking in Section 34, that because we have had a past transgression, 6,300 individuals concerned, that there is some security put in place, I guess, at an operational level around this legislation to ensure that that does not happen again. So we do have the Inland Revenue Department involved directly in Section 34. So because I think they have had some past history of an incident, we need to make sure, and maybe it's a question that I can put to the Minister and the Chair, if he knows what kind of safeguards are being put in place to govern the operation of Section 34 in this bill, to what kind of safeguards there will be around that private information. We've also had the Accident Compensation Corporation and the Ministry of Social Development, who have been caught up in very large privacy breaches. Yes, and I certainly would not want to see this happen with this student loan scheme bill, because, Mr Chair, there are 101,000 New Zealanders who have got student loans. A lot of them are overseas, but a lot of them are here in New Zealand. And if we were to see a large privacy breach of that scale concerning 101,000 New Zealanders, and I'm one of them, I'm still paying my student loan back, I would be very upset as a citizen of this country and as someone who doesn't want their private information put out there if there were a breach. So it is a serious question, Mr Chair, to the Minister and the Chair as to what safeguards have been put in place to govern Section 34 of this bill, Mr Chair. So if the Minister and the Chair could afford me an opportunity to answer that, I would very much appreciate that as a citizen, as a Member of Parliament. Mr Chair?
Chris Farfoy.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. So around that, I guess that's where the alternative title around student loan, can I trust this government with my private information scheme amendment bill does come through. And another alternative title to this bill, Mr Chair, would be the student loan scheme, a glimmer of hope with this government amendment bill. Because within Part 3, I think it is, of this bill, it does open up the bill to change the definition of income to ensure there's a principle of fairness applies to this bill with measures to expand the definition of what income is. So as opposed to just a general old PAYE or whatever you get paid in your contractor's terms, this will expand the definition of income to include people who receive their money from a company, a trust, a superannuation scheme or other source which should be treated as the same way in those who earn a weekly wage. So I guess in terms of that alternative title, there is a glimmer of hope that there may be a principle of fairness on the other side of the House because they are applying it to this bill. Because as Andrew Little said in his, I think it was Part 3 speech to this bill, there is a sense, Mr Chair, that the student loan scheme levels the playing field with New Zealanders to be able to let all people, regardless of their level of income or not, to be able to get a tertiary education. And that is a very fair system. Of course, everyone has to pay the money back, and what this bill is about making sure we can be much more efficient with that. But what hasn't been fair in the past, Mr Chair, has been when people who have been able to, manipulate their earnings, whether they be in a trust or a company or through their superannuation scheme or through any other source of information, haven't necessarily been pulling their weight or paying their fair share of their income, which is contained in this bill, to pay their student loan. So I think in that respect, this does close a number of small loopholes in the scheme, which on this side we are very happy to see, and because of that I think there is an alternative title to this bill of the student loan scheme, a glimmer of fairness with the National Party amendment bill. Can I just and I don't want to try the chair too much, go back to the privacy issue, because there was quite a number of submissions to the Select Committee around that, and one of them did come from an organisation within my electorate of Mana, the Whitireia Law Centre, who did, Mr Chair, make a very strong submission against the Section 34, the abuse of the exchange of private information and data matching. And if I can take the opportunity to speak to that, because in their evidence or in their submission to the Select Committee, they did point out a very strong opposition to that data matching, because they did have reservations with that aspect of the bill. In particular, they said, and I quote, "We are concerned about the potential breach of privacy over an individual's personal information where data matching occurs." And if I can just carry on to another part of the bill, where on point 8 of their submission, they said the Law Centre acknowledges that there are benefits to government departments sharing information. However, the more information that is shared leads to greater risks around an individual's civil liberties and the reason for the information being provided by an individual. So while the Chair may have been pulling me up in terms of going maybe outside of the scope of some of those instances with the other agencies, there is genuine concern out there, Mr Chair, in the community because of what has happened in the past around the security of the information that is contained in Section 34 around that exchange of information between the Inland Revenue and the Customs Department. So I do reiterate my request to the Minister and the Chair, given the recent events, given the historical events around the exchange of information, if he can give us some kind of indication of what the Minister or the departments are doing around the security of information, which I think is a very topical issue at the moment, given what has happened at the EQC.
Mr Chairman.
Dr Megan Woods.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. And I'm pleased to take a call on part 1 of this legislation in regard to the title. If we note that